Civil engineering services encompass a wide range of tasks, from site analysis and design to project management and construction supervision. The charges for these services depend on the factors such as project complexity, scope, location, and the experience of the engineering firm. These may be structured as lump sum, hourly rates, or percentage-based, depending on the contract type. Understanding these cost structures is essential for budgeting and ensuring a successful project execution.
Charges for civil engineering services are usually computed using one of the 6 methods. First is the salary cost times multiplier plus direct salary expense, which is reimbursable. Then the hourly bearing rates plus reimbursable per dime cost plus fixed fee or the CPFF, fixed price, percentage or of the construction cost. The salary cost times multiplier plus direct salary expense, which is reimbursable, are frequently used method of determining the charges for civil engineering services. With this method, charges for engineering services are based mainly on their direct salaries. The salary cost is defined as the direct salary plus employee benefits, while the multiplier is a factor that compensates the civil engineer for overhead plus a reasonable margin for contingency, interest, or invested capital readiness to serve the profit. The hourly billing rate is a method of compensation is very similar to the salary cost times multiplier in that hourly billing rate include all direct personnel expense, overhead, and profit, while the per dime normally refer to an 8-hour day.
The per dime charge should be based on the complexity, risk, and importance of services and on the civil engineer's professional standing, expertise, and breadth of experience. The civil engineer is also reimbursed for travel and subsistence cost and for other out-of-pocket expenses incurred when away from the home office.
Cost plus fixed fee. Under this agreement, the civil engineer is reimbursed for the actual cost. All services and supplies related to the project, including salary cost, overhead, direct non-salary expenses, and fixed fee.
The cost plus fixed fee basically requires that the client and the civil engineer define and agree upon the scope of services the civil engineer to perform. Such definition of the scope of service is essential to enable the civil engineer to estimate cost and propose an equitable fixed fee amount. This must be incorporated into the client-engineer agreement. The cost plus fixed fee method can also be used when the civil engineer is required to start providing service before the detailed scope or services can be determined. In such cases, the following consideration apply. The general scale and intent of the project should be fairly well defined, even if the full scope is indeterminate. For example, the number of size and character of buildings or other facilities. The types of service to be performed by the civil engineer should be agreed upon the policy report. The agreement should be also provide for a warranted adjustment in the fixed fee. In the event that the physical scope of this project, time of completion, of level of effort, services required are materially changed over those completed during the negotiations. So, the fixed price amount can be calculated as the sum total of estimated engineering cost for the salaries, overhead and non-salary expenses, and allowance for contingency interest on invested capital. Readiness to serve an reasonable amount for profit. A fixed price agreement should contain a clearly started time period during which the service will be performed and provision for adjustment of compensation if the project is delayed for a reason beyond the civil engineer's control. Partial payment should be made to the civil engineer and started interval usually once a month during the performance of the services. These payments are usually based on the civil engineer's statements of percent completion to date.
Percentage of construction. The percentage of construction cost method is seldom used wrong because of increasing complexity and large variation in tasks for projects. The percentage of construction cost fee curves no longer have a direct correlation to the required engineering fees for specific projects. This method may be used to determine the compensation of the engineer for services where the principal responsibility is the detailed design or construction supervision of facilities to be constructed. Construction cost is defined as the estimated total cost of constructing the facility to be covered by the proposed detailed design or construction supervision services, excluding the fees and other costs of such projects, the cost of land and right-of-way, and legal and administrative expenses. The percentage fee shall consider the type, complexity, location, and magnitude of construction cost of the project, and shall not exceed the following percentage of estimated construction cost. Feasibility studies are 3%, detailed engineering design 6%, detailed architecture and engineering design 8%, and construction supervision, which is 10%. These percentages include only those works normally undertaken in arriving at the expected studies or outputs and do not include special studies or investigations. It is further emphasized that the above percentages are only ceilings, and it does not necessarily mean that the percentages shall always be adopted for each project. The actual percentages of a particular project will depend on the factors, the type, complexity, location, and magnitude of construction cost. Schedule of minimum basic fees. When doing work on foreign assisted projects or in projects where international consultants participate, the civil engineer performing similar or equivalent work should accept compensation that approximates the international standards rate. Civil engineers regularly employed in the private sector shall have minimum compensation corresponding to 10% more than the minimum wage, prevailing in the region as basically monthly salary. Civil engineers employed in the government sector shall have minimum basic monthly salary corresponding to appropriate entry positions provided by the Civil Service Commission. A civil engineer employed in the private sector who signs and seals the civil engineering plans, specifications, and other related documents of a certain projects for and in behalf of his employers shall be compensated with a minimum 10% of the professional fee for the project, over and above the basic monthly salary.